Almost every time there are elections in the offing, as a templated build-up, a narrative is created alleging the rise of Islamophobia in India. And it usually peaks when the Prime Minister is on foreign soil. Many within the country and abroad claim that Muslims are under a threat and always bring up the issue of human rights when the Prime Minister undertakes a foreign trip. Right now, the Prime Minister is in France, but significantly, he is next going to be in the UAE. Tomorrow, he's going to be in the UAE. And over time, there has been multiple engagements that India has started doing, not just with Muslims within India, but also with Islamic countries, Islamic religious leaders, heads of state, whether it be engaging with the UAE or the visit, the 5-day visit of the head of the Muslim Global Council, which is currently underway, Sheikh Al-Isa. India has decided to turn the entire Islamophobia narrative on its head. But have they managed to quell that kind of criticism? We are joined now by two of the most credible voices from within India and outside on the so-called issue of Islamophobia. Joining us now on the special broadcast, we have C. Holland Taylor, Special Advisor for International Affairs to the General Chairman of the Nahdlatul Ulama Central Board, and Sirajuddin Qureshi, President of the India Islamic Cultural Center. Mr. Qureshi, I want to start with you, because when Sheikh Al-Isa was hosted by your center, along with the National Security Advisor, you said it's going to send out a strong message to the world. What kind of message are you hoping to send out?
See, number one, because, both this great personality was here in the Islamic Culture Center. When the meeting started, the message was very clear by Sheikh Al-Isa that, in India, when he came, they had some other doubts and they were giving some wrong guidance, and they were advised not to do all these things here. But, when he came here, he had a very big team of many people, his advisors, his supporters. And when he started, he was very convinced about the Indian systems, Indian constitution. He praised the Indian constitution. He praised that, India is doing very well. Whatever people they say there is discrimination, there is this wrong, it is being, minority is being targeted. He was very clear. See, India is the only place where 140 million people, there are 1.4 billion people, they are obeying the constitution very well, and there seems no discrimination. And the message has gone to entire world, because 1.4 billion people, those who admired the Indian constitution, they admired the Indian system, they admired the Prime Minister's message. We all believe that whatever he was saying, small incidents, they are always there in every government, but majority of Muslims, I tell you, are about 25 crore people, they are with the government and they always try to be with the government also. People, they are spreading wrong impressions about the community. And, if you see, Ajit Dawal Sahab, he also spoke very well. He said the religion in Islam is the best religion. And, he said, we are very happy that, this religion is doing very well in India. So this was a clear message of both the leaders here, they came here. And Isa Sahab also spoke that he wants that there should be peace.
Okay. All right. So it's a message of peace, message of peace and the rights of minorities in India. That's the message you wanted to send out. However, despite that, Mr. Taylor, repeatedly there is this refrain, especially when the Prime Minister is on foreign soil. It's happened again, despite the fact that he has reached out domestically, internationally to the Muslim world. What would be your independent assessment of India's record, especially in the last 9 years, vis-a-vis minorities?
From my perspective, one should not look at this simply from the terms of the past 9 years, but since independence, since the British rule, since more than 1,000 years, because we live in a world where people have long cultural and historical memories. And there's no doubt that India I'm just speaking very frankly as the advisor to the chairman of the world's largest Muslim organization. India's had a difficult history, and there's been a lot of trauma with colonialism, with invasion and wars. And so I think we have to look at all of this from a historical perspective. The chairman of Nahdlatul Ulama, Qiyai Haji Yahya Khalil Stakov, always says that every ethnic group, every religious group in the world has grounds for resentment towards other groups. This is just the nature of human history. There's no part of the world that is not plagued by this kind of history. What we have to do is move forward into the future, finding ways to coexist. And we're optimistic that India is on that path.
Also, we are talking at a time when the Prime Minister, after his two-day visit to France, is going to be in the UAE. How do you see his engagement, especially with the Islamic world, whether it be the UAE, whether it be Indonesia, with Bangladesh, with Maldives, and even with Palestine?
Well, looking from an Indian perspective, you have Islam to the west, you have Islam within India, and you have Islam to the east. Nahdlatul Ulama, particularly, since it's rooted in Javanese civilization and culture, which has a conscious connection to a pre-existing Indianized civilizational sphere. The region where we are from, I'm in Medina right now, near the Prophet's Mosque, just performed Friday prayer here in Saudi Arabia. We can see a lot of changes that are occurring, beneficial changes occurring in Saudi Arabia. But then if we look at the historical origins of Islam within the Indonesian archipelago, it has a deep connection to Indian civilization. And this is something that came out last year in the G20 Religion Forum, which was a main event of the Indonesian presidency of the G20 last year. We had very prominent leaders from India, a Muslim, Roman Catholic, and a number of prominent Hindu leaders. And some of our Hindu friends refer to Nahdlatul Ulama and the Islam in Indonesia as the humanitarian Islam of the East, because we've had an easier history here than what is characterized the history of Islam in certain other parts of the world. But I certainly think that if you look to the East, there's a possibility for cooperation and communication between both Hindus, Muslims, and other minorities in India with Nahdlatul Ulama. If you look to the West, I think there's very positive signs for economic cooperation, and then also the positive changes that are occurring in Saudi Arabia as Saudi Arabia moves beyond Wahhabism into a post-Wahhabi future.
What's also important is at the center for shared civilizational values, you have constantly tried to engage with people to project a more reformist face of Islam and spoken very very stridently against radicalization. Do you think, in a sense, that also echoes the kind of philosophy that India is trying to project, especially the current Prime Minister? Because repeatedly he's also said it's not about a community. We need to fight together with countries like Bangladesh and Maldives, for example, against radicalism. The community and communalism and radicalism should be separated.
Yeah, we agree with this 100%. The Nahdlatul Ulama is a religious nationalist organization. It represents over 40% of the population of Indonesia. Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim majority nation and democracy, but the Nahdlatul Ulama is what we could call, has a beneficent religious nationalism. And we certainly feel that it's important, whether one is a Muslim or a non-Muslim, to be loyal to the state. And it's very important because the tenets of classical Islamic orthodoxy, particularly what are known as fiqh, classical Islamic law, and the law of governance, fiqh siyasa, these emerged 1,000 years ago and more in the context of the Middle East, where Muslim polities existed in a state of permanent conflict with non-Muslim neighbors. And so it is very necessary in today's world that Muslims themselves, particularly ulama, Muslim theologians and religious leaders and mass organizations, both be honest about this history, honest about this legacy, and then look what is the context of the world that we occupy today. And our conversations, for example, in Egypt with Al-Azhar, our conversations with the Saudis and the Emiratis, go specifically to the heart. For example, it's very important that Muslims treat non-Muslim minorities well and justly, And that Muslims also look at these elements of classical Islamic orthodoxy. Used as a saying in America, it takes two to tango. And really, we can create a positive, virtuous cycle if all religious communities cooperate together to find a pathway towards peaceful coexistence.
In fact, Mr. Qureshi, that's also something that Sheikh Alisa said when you were hosting him. And he said that, we should not try and attribute criminality or any terrorist traits to any one religion. Radicalism is what needs to be targeted. However, people are questioning the motives of his visit to India right now, linking it to the UCC being proposed, that just to sort of tamp down on the effect of the UCC, the Uniform Civil Code debate, he was brought to India. What would you think?
No, because it is our internal matter. People, they were thinking about it. But fortunately, he did not mention anything and he was not questioned anything about the UPCC. I believe that, he was very straightforward to mention about his views. When he came to India, he was very happy to come here. He said, this is the best country I have ever seen. And he said, you have hosted this program. The event was also, he appreciated the venue in the Islamic Culture Center. He said, the humanity is more important than the religion. Religion is later and the humanity is first. So this message is clearly, he said that, India is growing everywhere. It has become global now. And, we should respect all people, all religions. Those have also, mentioned that, all religions are good. But he appreciated the Islam, that it is the best religion in India. So all these things, they both were of the same opinion and both were talking about the goodness of the country, about the goodness of the religions, all religions in India. They were talking about the good atmosphere in India. We are now 1.4 billion. People, they gave the message we should live together. We should live together very peacefully. He said, peace is important. This is the message of Islam also. We should always try to follow Islam and we should always keep in mind the religion's sanctity.
Now, also, you are speaking of how the message of
सारे मोर्चों पर लड़े थे कंधे में लाकर और बहुत ही गर्व हुआ आज पंजाब रेजिमेंट को यहाँ पर देखकर पेरिस के दिल के में हम एक ऐतिहासिक विश्वास के आधार पर आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और हम वैश्विक चुनौतियों का साथ समाधान ढूंढ सकते हैं जो G20 के शिखर वार्ता में उसकी कार्यसूची में होंगे। हम चाहते हैं कि जो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय समुदाय है उसका खंडन के जोखिम से अपनी दुनिया को बचाए और इसलिए हमने पेरिस एजेंडा और नया वित्तीय वैश्विक कॉम्पैक्ट पर इकट्ठे काम किया है। आपने सितंबर में जो दुनिया के राष्ट्राध्यक्ष होंगे, जो हेड्स ऑफ स्टेट और गवर्नमेंट होंगे, उनको आमंत्रित किया है और हम सब चाहते हैं कि एक ऐसे अंतर्राष्ट्रीय व्यवस्था का स्थापना हो जो शांति और विकास की ओर हमें ले जाए। मुझे बहुत गर्व हुआ था जब 2018 में मैंने आपके साथ अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सौर गठबंधन की स्थापना की थी और हम चाहते हैं कि बिजली का उत्पादन 2030 तक 1000 गीगावाट का हो और हमने आपके पिछले जो यात्रा थी उसके दौरान भी हमने एक नया पहल शुरू किया था प्लास्टिक से संघर्ष का। तो ये जो दो उदाहरण हैं वो दर्शाते हैं कि हम अगर इकट्ठे काम करें तो हम सारे क्षेत्रों में नई संरचना बना सकते हैं, ना सिर्फ जहां युद्ध से बचने के लिए। और G20 COP28 और जो संयुक्त राष्ट्र के समुद्र पर सम्मेलन होने जा रहा है नीस में 2025 में, उसका आयोजन भी हम इकट्ठे कर सकते हैं। तो हमारे जो सामरिक हित हैं वो उसका अभिसरण हम इंडो पैसिफिक तक जाता है, क्योंकि हमारे एक ही दृष्टिकोण है इसके बारे में। हम आधिपत्य से लड़ना चाहते हैं। हम हमारे सशस्त्र बल नियमित बातचीत कर रहे हैं और पूरी योगदान कर रहे हैं ताकि जो शांति है और सुरक्षा है इस क्षेत्र में बनाई रहे और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय कानून का सम्मान रहे। ये जो सामरिक आत्मीयता है हमारे दोनों देशों के बीच में वो ठोस रूप ले रही है नए योजनाओं के साथ, खासकर जो आर्थिक योजनाएं हम इकट्ठे कर रहे हैं। भारत आज दूसरे सबसे बड़ा हमारा साझेदार है एशिया में। हमने नए कार्य क्षेत्र ढूंढे हैं जैसे कि स्टील, अंतरिक्ष, ऊर्जा, सिविल, न्यूक्लियर और टेक्नोलॉजी। ये जो नया स्थिति है जिसकी ओर हम अपनी विपक्ष साझेदारी को ले जा रहे हैं, वो सिर्फ उन महिलाओं और पुरुषों की वजह से बना पाएंगे जो रोजाना इन संबंधों को जीते हैं, और उनमें से कई सारे आज रात के डिनर पर हमारे साथ आएंगे। और फिर हम युवा पीढ़ी को नहीं भूल सकते, क्योंकि भारत और फ्रांस में युवा ही आगे भविष्य की फ्रांस की छवि भारत में और भारत की छवि फ्रांस में उसको नया रुख देगी और उसको पुनर्निर्मित करेगी। 2025 में हमने सोचा था कि 20,000 फ्रांस के स्टूडेंट्स भारत तक पहुंचाएंगे, और कोविड के बावजूद हम इस लक्ष्य को पा पाए हैं। और हम समझते हैं कि यहां से 2030 तक 30,000 ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स को भेजेंगे और हमारे प्रयास इसकी ओर जाएंगे। और हम चाहते हैं कि जो युवा भारतीय फ्रांस में पढ़ने के निर्णय लेते हैं उनको आगे भी अपने दिल के करीबी देश के में आने का मौका दिया जाना चाहिए। इसलिए हम अपना वीजा की नीति भी उसके अनुकूल बनाएंगे ताकि वो ये कड़ी बनाए रखे। हम चाहते हैं कि जो कोऑपरेशन शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में हो रहा है वो संस्कृति के क्षेत्र में भी बढ़ाएं ताकि संगीत, डांस और
We'll return in just a minute because the joint statement is going to be given right now. President Macron speaking, and in a while we'll hear from Prime Minister Modi. Don't go anywhere.